This is JCU Conversations, a podcast show from James Cook University, Singapore. Tune in as we ask experts in the industry more about their lives and their approach to success. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's listen to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Akshita, Student Leader at James Cook University, Singapore. Joining us today is Professor Upton, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Singapore at James Cook University. Since coming on board in June, she's been shaping the future of our campus with fresh ideas. We're excited to hear her thoughts on what's ahead for our university and how the JCU community can be a part of this journey. Thank you for being here with us today, Professor Upton.
Thank you.
So maybe just to begin with, you've been here since June, and I just want to know how you're finding Singapore. Is it hot? Hotter than expected?
Is it hot? It's hot. Yeah, it's an amazing place to be. Of course, you don't need me to tell you that, but it is just an amazing place to be. And it's taken me about half the time, I think, to just kind of believe that I am really here and that it's not a dream that's just going to suddenly, I'm going to wake up and find that it didn't really happen, because it's just so amazing to be here and to be at JCU as well. It's a really easy place to move to, surprisingly. It's very different from the UK, where I come from, but people have been so welcoming and have made everything very easy for me. So I've had a wonderful start to things and really enjoying it. But yeah, it is hot. It's very hot.
That's a chief complaint that everyone has. So I thought I'd ask you that first. How have you been finding the university so far?
The university is just brilliant. I've worked for quite a few universities, and I have collaborated with other universities around the world as well as in the UK. But there is no university like JCU. It is just an amazing place to be. And I pinch myself to go, this is a university that is not only really deeply embedded in Singapore, the wonderful international, intercultural hub that is here, that is leading in so many aspects of global developments that we can be part of. But then we've also got JCU Australia, which is just amazing, because one university that has Singapore, the Barrier Reef, the rainforest, Queensland and Asia and Australia, it's just to have all of that within one university. It gives us a diversity and a range of learning opportunities and research specialisms that is just unheard of anywhere else. And I'm so excited to be able to be part of that.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that's the sentiment that I echo as a student as well. Because looking at my friends who are in the local universities and, being able to understand that my experience here is very diverse and being able to interact with so many international students. And I think I can appreciate that as a student here myself. So you mentioned that you've actually been collaborating with quite a few universities, and you were at another university previously. I think I'm curious to know more about your journey in education. So maybe if you could share a bit more about that.
Okay, so my journey is full of serendipity. I think that's how careers actually work in the real world. So, of course, I'm going to advise all of our students to plan very carefully, but I'm also going to advise everybody to be open to opportunities, because I think there is a kind of quiet skill of making sure that you're kind of tuned in with your radar to opportunities as they come along, and they may not be where you expect them to be, and they may not be what you expected them to be. But they do come along, and you have moments in your life where you have a choice, and some opportunities you take and some you don't. And I think being in the right place and the right time is a kind of dark art, but you can prepare yourself for that by utilising your networks and by, as I say, being receptive to opportunities. So my educational journey was not direct. I set out with a background in languages. I've always been interested in international working and travel, and particularly in cultural interactions. So I set out with a background in languages. I very quickly then turned back to my real passion, which was theatre, and continued with theatre and languages for a while. And then serendipity came along. I was actually on my way to working in theatre, and I got a temporary job in a university teaching drama, which was really not on the plan. And then the rest of it's history, really. I became eventually a lecturer, a senior lecturer. I became a deputy dean in charge of learning and teaching and quality and student experience. I think I was always very curious. Some would say nosy. I'm good at meddling. But I was always very curious, and I worked with other faculties and other subject areas. I took on a lot of university roles and sector roles more widely. So I found myself leading the subject association in the UK for drama and theatre in higher education for quite a number of years, and doing a lot of external work. Eventually, after 10 years or so in my first university, I moved to Northern Ireland to take up the chair in drama there, and that was another exciting few years, setting up a new drama department there with research and teaching and a new team in a new place. Northern Ireland is a very different place from the rest of the UK. And I was out in Derry, London Derry, right on the border with the Republic of Ireland. After a number of years there, we got things kind of stabilised and developed, and I applied actually to be a professor in London at Middlesex University, and I couldn't make the interview date. This is what I mean about serendipity. So they then contacted me and said, well, actually, we've got a dean role that you might be interested in. And I thought, well, I'm not sure, I'll just go for the practice. And then became a dean, then a Pro Vice-Chancellor, then executive dean. So prior to coming here, I'd been a Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Middlesex University in London, where I'd had two specific portfolios, one in research, knowledge exchange and engagement, and then in recent years, international responsibility with a role in global innovation and impact. And then this opportunity came along at just the right moment in my life, and it just was the most wonderful opportunity that I could not say no to, and I'm so glad I'm here.
Yeah, hearing about your experience really does sound like I've lived through it, because I really find myself relating to it. You know, the serendipity that you mentioned. As someone who's graduating soon, I find myself at a crossroads as well. And, you know, your background in theatre is something in common again, because I was doing theatre back in high school, and, you know, I just never had the right opportunity to come back to it. So, you know, maybe now that you're here, JCU will have a drama club, and then I could come back as alumni.
That would be wonderful.
Yes. And yeah, as you mentioned, you've been teaching drama and theatre. It's been around 30 years now, and you've moved into academic leadership. So I want to understand how your experience in theatre and the arts has influenced maybe some of your approaches to leadership, as well as education.
So I've reflected a lot on this, because people are often surprised when they hear that I have a background in theatre, and they sort of look at me quizzically and say, how did you end up in management? As if something must have gone a bit wrong somewhere along the way. And I actually think, you know, hindsight is a very exact science, but I can look back and see how I can chart the steps, but more interestingly, I think I can chart the continuity of skills development. And that is quite clear to me, that there are certain skills that are involved in theatre making, and although I did some acting and backstage roles, my real preference was for theatre directing, still is for theatre directing, give me half a chance. And the part of that I really love is actually being in a rehearsal room with actors, and the creative problem solving of being in a room and starting the day, nobody knowing how you're going to get to the next step. And you hope that by the end of the day, you'll go out with something creative made. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have to come back and try something else. But there's a process of generating ideas, working collaboratively, problem solving with other people, and rejecting the easy options that I think is really good training for leadership and management. So let me give you an example of what I mean by rejecting the easy options. If you're doing, there's often little actor exercises you can do, very simple ones. So anyone could do this. So let's say you've got a chair, and you say, you know, how many ways can you sit on this chair? So first of all, everyone's just going to sit the normal way. And we can probably all think of, we could sit front ways, we could sit sideways, we could sit backwards, we could, sit on the back of the chair, we could sit on the floor and lean on the chair. We could probably all think of about 5 or 6 ways of sitting on a chair before we start going, and we've kind of run out of the easy options. And then we start feeling a bit lost. And then we start having to look at what other people are doing. And then we start having to go, well, maybe we need to think differently and put the chair upside down or sideways. What if we didn't have a chair? And that's when creativity starts to happen. So I don't think it's a special talent that some people have and other people don't have. I think it's a practice. It's like a muscle that you have to train and exercise. But I think coming from an arts background gives you that kind of willingness to be a bit lost and to keep pushing for the more interesting and better solutions to and different ways of seeing. Really, theatre is about different ways of collectively seeing the world, creating a space where we can scrutinise what we take for granted and things that we don't think we can change. And I think there's a lot of that in management. And I haven't even mentioned what people call soft skills. It's a bugbear of mine. I think they're very high-order skills of collaboration, negotiation, empathy, very important. The actors have to imagine that they see the world through someone else's eyes. And that's a really important skill, I think, in management as well, to be able to relate to other worldviews.
And I think it's also, there's a lot of value in, everyone coming together and having different perceptions of the same thing, essentially, right?
Absolutely.
And I think what you mentioned brought up this quote that I really like: the roads worth traveling are the ones that are less traveled.
Yeah.
So, just thinking about that and understanding how invigorating theater is, but also how challenging, how frightful it could be to put on a performance. And I'm really able to see that connection here. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. You mentioned about the generation of ideas, and I heard that you had this conversation with ChatGPT. So, and I understand that your research interests lie in generative AI as well. So maybe you could share a bit more about this.
Yeah, well, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm not a researcher in generative AI, but I'm hearing a lot about it here in Singapore. And interestingly, I've been trying to focus on what are the skills that are going to be needed by our students as a workforce of the future, working with AI. And obviously in higher education, there's a lot of uncertainty around the risks at the moment, of the risks of plagiarism, authenticity, data protection and privacy, all of those things. But we are very keen to embrace it in James Cook because it's a tool for learning. It's not going to go away, so we can't pretend it's not here. And we need to make sure that our students now are ready to be leaders in the future in a world of AI, where AI is doing things, and whatever succeeds AI is doing things that we can't even imagine now. But what's really interesting, and I'm coming back to your question, is that when I'm in business networks and business circles here and people are talking about what's going to be needed for that workforce, they're not really talking about tech computing skills. They're not really talking about data analysis and data synthesis, although there is some of that. What they seem to be really focusing on is, as I've heard people say, EQ rather than IQ, on creativity, on trying to imagine how things could be different from the way they are now, on trying to work collaboratively to generate those kind of ideas and to shape them and to evaluate them. And I'm sitting in the back usually going, well, this is all sounding rather familiar to someone coming from an arts background. So suddenly I feel that the values that underpin arts practice are really coming to the fore in the sort of what we think of as a harder world of STEM and business. I've always believed in interdisciplinary working anyway. I think that's just axiomatic to me. But these skills are now really, really important. So we are working with ChatGPT. There's a lot to be resolved. But I didn't have the answer to the question you asked me to think about, which was, what would ChatGPT offer to students in higher education in the future? I've got some ideas, but I thought, well, I'm not sure. So what should I do? Of course, I asked ChatGPT to tell me the answer to that question. And it is super impressive, of course, because we all use it. And I typed in the question, and it instantly, within seconds, gave me quite a long essay, a very good essay answer, with a series of headings, most of which I must say we are already thinking about. So things like a personalised student experience, which is really exciting. A lot of efficiency in the way that we run our university as a business, and the kind of manual processing of student affairs that we have at the moment. A lot of access to information, multiple languages, overcoming all sorts of communication barriers that we currently have. But then I said to it, well, could you, this is a very long answer, ChatGPT, could you give me a shorter answer? And it gave me a shorter answer. I said, what about an answer suitable for a podcast interview? And it said, certainly. But it didn't quite feel like my voice. So I asked it, what would the answer be in the voice of an English professor of theatre in a podcast? And it said it had no problem with that, and it would give me some dramatic flair, which I rather liked. But then it still gave me quite a long answer, and then I asked it for a shorter one, and it gave me a shorter answer. So I'd like to share with you the shorter, succinct version of ChatGPT's answer to the question of what generative AI will offer to students in higher education in Singapore in the future, in the voice of an English professor of theatre doing a podcast, succinctly. It's taken a long time to introduce that, hasn't it? So it says it's still capturing the theatrical flair, so I feel I should probably do something. But generative AI is set to revolutionise higher education in Singapore, offering students a learning experience that's tailored to their needs, personalised, adaptive and engaging. It will reshape research, streamlining vast information, and assist students in crafting their written work with ease. In line with Singapore's Smart Nation vision, AI literacy will become essential, preparing students for a tech-driven future. For educators, AI will relieve them of administrative burdens, allowing more time for meaningful teaching. While ethical concerns like plagiarism and access persist, Singapore's foresight will ensure this transformation is both responsible and profound. It's an exciting future for education, a new act in the grand theatre of learning. Thank you, ChatGPT. So I think I actually couldn't have said it better myself, a lot of that, apart from that last bit. Wasn't me.
That was a bit on the nose.
That was a little bit too much flair.
Yeah, but I think as a student, I have personally been concerned, like, using generative AI, while it does offer so much, it allows you to consolidate the information and like really brings in efficiency into the process. But we're always told like, oh my God, generative AI is bad. Don't do it, right? And it's just, shouldn't we be learning more about how to do it properly? Because it's not going away. It's not going away. So yeah, really excited to see where this goes. So
you're exactly right. How to do it properly is the right thing, because there is a possibility at the moment that you can kind of bypass learning if you just use ChatGPT to answer the question. I mean, if you just used it as a proxy brain in some way and you kind of bypass your own brain, that's fine. You'll get to the assessment, but when you get out and you get that job to deploy the skills and knowledge that you've claimed you have, it's in your phone, not in your head, and that's going to be a bit of a problem for you. But the question really is, as you rightly say, how to use it well. And that is the kind of learning that students need now. But I think the problem, the place that we're at, it's moving very quickly, but the place we're at now is, what does that mean? What does it mean to use it well? And that's the question that I think remains for me a little bit open just now, but it's moving so fast that we just kind of have to go with it and work it out as we go, I think. I think it's not going to go away, and we can't wait for it to be resolved. So we have to be the people who are leading that determination of what it means to learn with it, what it means to use it well, because it's the students of today, literally today, who literally tomorrow will be the people using ChatGPT and other generative AI and will be using it well, hopefully. So there is it's clear that we're going to have those skills of working with other people. That is really clear, but also a very strong capacity to evaluate the information. So before I got to my synthesized version of that little answer there, I had 5 or 6 versions, and each time I went, no, that's not quite right. I've read it. I don't quite like that bit. It's not quite right. I need to ask the question differently. It's a really critical skill for us. It's not going to be actually having the answers, because we're going to be able to get the answers. It's asking the questions, refining the questions, constantly evaluating and being curious. And I think we know that there are certain things that are really important, and then the rest is about learning how to learn the new stuff.
Yeah. So it's really not so much about replacing what you're doing with your brain. It's more about enhancing your learning and really just using your critical thinking skills to make it as good as it could be.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. And I think we've also heard that you're pretty passionate about mental health and inclusivity. And that's something that I feel very, very strongly about as well. As a psychology major and, as something that I've been trying to do as part of the JCU student clubs. So I would like to learn more from you on how you plan to sort of incorporate these areas into the university life and the student experience here at JCU.
Yeah, so I've been talking to our various support teams who are absolutely brilliant, but they're quite small. I am passionately committed to inclusivity because I think there's an underlying question of fairness, of providing opportunity for everybody to fulfill their potential and be at their best. And it sort of links to the commitment to mental health support as well, because we want everybody to be at their best while they're students and beyond. And not just be at their best academically, although it's really important that you're at their best physically and mentally in order to succeed academically. But we want people to be living fulfilling lives on a daily basis as students and beyond that, and to have joy in their lives. I really find there is a huge amount of joy in learning, and we don't talk enough about that. And so it's really important that we support people's physical and mental well-being. And I know that there are sometimes it can be difficult to talk about mental health, but it's just something we all have to manage. So it's one thing that unites us rather than divides us. And I just think the more support we can give to each other and to our students and indeed to our staff, the better our chances of success as students, as colleagues, and in our life beyond. So I will be looking to strengthen that provision and to make it more part of our everyday experience. And I think at the moment we focus a lot on assessment needs, but I'm really also keen to extend that into the everyday learning experience and the lived experience of students, and to make sure that it's part of our value proposition for students when they're first thinking of joining us at JCU. So people don't look at us and think, well, I might not get the support I need there. But people come to us confident that they will get support. Because if you work with anyone over an extended period of time, there will be highs and lows in that time. And we're all going to encounter bumps in the road, and we need to make sure that we're here ready to help each other when that happens.
I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have that support here at GCU and to also pay it forward by supporting the freshmen that come in. So really to see it turn into an organizational level initiative, I think it's something that I would be very excited to see as well, because it's not just about supporting students, it's also about teaching them to support others around them, which I think this would definitely be helpful towards. Yeah,
and I even learned we've got a peer wellbeing scheme. I'm going to get the title of that wrong, but we've got peer wellbeing buddies, and I just think that's a fantastic scheme for students to be able to access. So I'm looking forward to seeing that growing as well.
Yeah. All right, before we wrap up this lovely conversation, I do have a question on a more personal level. If you were to travel back in time, maybe, let's say a decade, more, 20 decades.
I could go further than that.
What advice would you give to your younger self? Maybe your 25-year-old self, your 20-year-old self? What is the advice that you would give? Because a lot of our students, we are at that age now, and I think we would really love to know what we can do now that we are at this age, and then just learn from you.
Yeah, so I'm always wary of giving this sort of advice. I mean, it's much worse than recommending a restaurant, isn't it? But I don't look back on my life with any regret. There have been really good choices and there have been some less good choices, but I don't regret any of that. So I think what I would say to my younger self would be to be bold, have confidence, to live by your values and work out what matters, and to look after the people you care about. And that would be about it. So I should have said also, follow your passion, first of all. Follow your passion, live by your values, and look after your people.
I think that's definitely something that I should keep in mind, yes. Thank you so much, Professor Upton, for your time. And it was really lovely having a chance to speak to you. As a student, I don't see any further opportunities to have a lengthy conversation with you like this. But it's been a really fantastic discussion. Where can listeners find you online if they want to connect with you after seeing this conversation?
So people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Carole-Anne Upton at James Cook University, Singapore, or on the James Cook University Singapore website. And thank you again. It's been a real privilege talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.